Was Charles Morgan killed because he was a secret government agent? Or was it because he was in charge of over $1 billion of gold?
Charles Morgan was a 39-year-old successful escrow agent in Arizona who disappeared after dropping his kids off at school. He could have been described as a successful business and family man. On March 22, 1977, he drove 2 of his 4 daughters to school and disappeared afterwards. He returned home 3 long days later on March the 25th. His wife Ruth claimed that when Charles returned home, he was missing a shoe, had a plastic handcuff around an ankle, and had his hands tied together with a zip tie. Chuck was unable to speak and resorted to writing down what happened on a piece of paper. He told Ruth that he was kidnapped and tortured. He wrote that he couldn't speak as he was given a hallucinogenic drug which, if he swallowed, would make him go insane, destroy his nervous system, or could even be fatal. He also asked Ruth to move his car from the driveway so that the people who kidnapped him did not know he had returned home. Ruth suggested calling the police, but Charles firmly refused, claiming that if the police were involved, the Morgan family would have a hit put on them. Ruth agreed and looked after Chuck for a week, and slowly his voice returned. At this point, Chuck started to tell Ruth about his second and secret identity. Chuck told Ruth that for the past 2 or 3 years, he was working for the Treasury Department in the government as an agent who fights against organized crime. He claimed that the people who kidnapped him had taken his Treasury identification, and he told her that he had escaped captivity by Phoenix's Sky Harbor Airport.
Let's be honest, Chip. If you were the wife, are you believing this story? Because could you just imagine your husband comes back and he's telling you he's been kidnapped, tortured, and just all this crazy stuff? It just seems so far-fetched. Imagine you didn't know this about your husband.
It sounds like Cap.
What does?
The story, like his story. So he's telling her, look, I can't speak because if I swallow this drug, it's fatal, it'll kill me, blah, blah, blah. So where is it? Is it just stuck in his throat and he's like, for days?
Well, they say that it was the case, and then slowly his voice does return, and he gets back to normal.
Sounds like he just didn't want to talk.
I think the bit where he says that he's like this secret agent and that he was, working for the Treasury Department, right, of the government.
Yeah.
I feel like that is something like that is the cover-up. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, sorry, I couldn't tell you about this, darling. It's because I actually work for the government. Like, almost seems cliche.
Like it's like he's up to something else, but he's gone for the government line because first of all, like, morally whatever is good. Like, he works for the government. Oh my God, my husband's a government agent, a secret government agent. That's the kind of, so he obviously wants to keep her happy. He's saying, yeah, look, this is what I do.
Yeah.
But really, it just
I think
sounds
it's
dodgy.
darker than that.
Way
darker than
sounds
that.
Dodgy already.
Also, it is a little bit convenient, right? That his ID that would prove he worked for the government or the Treasury Department, that's lost. Yeah, sorry, that's gone. Surely there has to be other ways that you can prove that you were a secret government agent.
Yeah, I mean, if the kidnappers did take the ID, that sounds believable because we probably would, right?
Yeah. But there has to be other ways to prove it.
Yeah, like can't you just log into the website or something?
Yeah, you'll log on.
Surely you've got like a gov.uk email.
Yeah.
Soon after he regained his strength, he went back to his normal life, but began to be more cautious and paranoid. He wore a bulletproof vest and grew a beard to change his identity. He also made sure to tell the school that only he would be allowed to pick up his daughters from now on, no one else. 2 months later, on June 7th, he disappeared again. There was no news or information about his whereabouts until 9 days later, when Ruth received a phone call from a woman who told her, quote, Chuck is alright. She also mentioned a Bible passage which says, men are afraid of a high place and of terrors on the road. Remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. 2 days after the phone call, Chuck was found in the desert by the San Juan Springs area, 40 miles west of Tucson. Despite wearing a bulletproof vest, Chuck died from being shot in the back of the head. The gun lay beside him and had no fingerprints. However, Chuck's hands did have gunshot residue on them, which led the authorities to believe he had fired the weapon. He was also wearing a belt, which had a secret sharp blade.
Okay, if he shot the gun, surely his fingerprints would be on the gun.
Yeah.
Not just gun residue.
The only way around that would be like gloves, right?
But he didn't have any
I mean,
on.
they would notice that. The police would have noticed that he would, yeah.
What this tells me, at least I think, is someone else has shot the gun, right? And then wiped it down and put it there to make it seem like a suicide. Like we've spoken about this when we first went through the case. It almost seems a bit movie-like, but we know it happens. Like these gangs, whatever, hitmen, they'll kill someone and make it seem like a suicide.
Also, the fact that he shot himself in the back of the head, I mean, it is possible to get you, it's not impossible, but I mean, when most people commit suicide, it's the standard
there or on the side of the head,
somewhere where it's, when you're killing yourself, you're not trying to make it as hard as possible, right?
Exactly. So it's very, very strange so far anyways. I definitely get the vibe that someone else is responsible for this death.
When the police looked in his car, they found directions to where he was shot dead. Some weapons, ammunition, a Citizens Band radio, a tooth of his, and some sunglasses which weren't his. Pinned to Chuck's underwear, he had a $2 bill which had 7 Spanish names written on it, along with the same Bible passage which was told by the anonymous woman on the phone call. On the back of the note, there was also a drawn map depicting Tucson and the Mexican border, and had highlighted 2 towns, Robles Junction and Sasabe, which were rumored to have smuggling incidents. The numbers 1 and 8 on the bill were also highlighted, and some of the words written on the bill were suspected to be Masonic references. 2 days later, the woman who had previously called Ruth called the sheriff's department. She called herself Green Eyes and told the officer that Chuck met her at a motel before he died. At the motel, he showed her a briefcase of cash and explained that the money would buy him out of a gang contract. Apparently, Chuck had also told her there was a hitman after him, as somebody had put a $90,000 contract on his life, but this was never confirmed. Before his second disappearance, Chuck had told his dad about a letter which he had written on the off chance he would disappear again. In this letter, he had written who was responsible, but the letter was never found. The authorities eventually ruled his death a suicide, but Chuck's family insisted he was murdered.
Ooh, Green Eyes. If this hasn't been made into a movie, it would be an amazing movie. It sounds so interesting.
Like the name Green Eyes, that's straight out of a screenplay. I don't know, who calls himself Green Eyes?
This woman does, because it sounds badass, is what it does, right? Weirdly enough, though, there was just loads of, bits of information on him, and this is what made me think, okay, let's say it's someone else kills him and puts that $2 note with all the information on him. It's just why? What was the point of this? Is it really to deceive the police and make them think other things that have nothing to do with it?
You would think so, because that's the main bit of evidence, right? This $2 note with all this info on. They've probably got to really look into that. By the time they finish looking into it and it's all the wrong info,
it's just been a big waste of time for them.
They've got away. They've covered all their tracks.
Yeah, there's just, I don't know. It seems also like something a crazy person would do. I think these people are after me. Cool, let me write everything down on a $2 note and then let me pin this to me so when I kill myself, people will see that there's... Do you know what I mean? It just seems like, what a crazy person would do. But then again, look, we could get into a bit of a reverse psychology thing here, but then maybe that's what the gang are thinking, and they're like, right, we'll just make him seem like he was crazy and play it off like this. So, I don't know, I think we could go back and forth on that for a while, but
the bill had 7 Spanish names on it. Is that to maybe tie it into a certain specific gang?
Or is it a note to the police that anybody in the police would know if this was organized crime and it was gang related? A lot of the time they have people in the police. So it's like they found this thing and they've said, look, and those names maybe mean something to someone in the police force. Do you know what I mean? Could be totally wrong there. Speculation at its absolute finest, but it is interesting. Anyways, let's talk about a few of the theories.
Theory number 1. The gun found at the crime scene belonged to Chuck, and his hands were covered in gunshot residue. However, the residue was found on his left hand, but Chuck was right-handed, so it doesn't make much sense for Chuck to shoot himself with his left hand and position the gun to the back of his own head. It would make much more sense for someone to have shot him and have wiped the gun down. Additionally, the crime scene did suggest that there was someone else there, due to the sunglasses.
I think me and Chip are probably both together on this. We are not a fan of the suicide claim here. We already know that there's someone else involved in here, Green Eyes, someone calling up, so it goes deeper than just one person.
There are other people 100% involved, so it doesn't point towards a suicide. Green Eyes seems to know too much.
Yeah.
Theory number 2. Although Chuck had claimed he was working against organized crime, many suspect he was involved in a gang. Many of those who were involved in the mafia had moved to Tuscany in the 1970s due to its controversial criminal justice system. This led to more gangs breaking out into groups. When the Lady Green Eyes talked to the police, the sheriff's department had confirmed that Chuck was staying in a motel for a week before he died. What was he doing? Was he hiding out? He was also seen in restaurants by witnesses days before his death. Chuck was also previously involved with a money laundering scheme with fraudulent real estate, and one of his clients was Joseph Bonanno Sr., who was the mafia crime boss of the Bonanno family. If he had double-crossed Joseph, this could explain why he was killed.
This gang theory, I think, we're definitely more onto something here. It's just prime, it's what we said. If you were involved in a gang or maybe something a bit more organized crime, I'll say, because gang makes it seem like you're just out on the streets doing stuff. But this sounds a little bit more organized, maybe runs a little bit deeper. I think if you did that, it's not something that maybe you'd want your family to know of, because it's one of those things, if they know, it puts them at risk. And so when he did come back from initially being kidnapped and tortured, he's gone with that government thing, like we said earlier. It just makes that seem a lot more believable.
He's lied to them because he's obviously caught in something real bad. He's gone missing. He might go missing again. And if he does, they're just going to think it's more government agent stuff. When in reality, he's involved in money laundering. He's obviously not a government agent. He's involved with mafia crime bosses. He's obviously a sketchy bloke. He makes his money illegally and is involved with some bad people.
And we know, especially back in those days, this sort of thing probably was not uncommon, to be perfectly honest.
And if you cross someone, it wasn't going to run.
You're dusted.
A lot easier to get away with killing someone as well.
True.
Theory number 3. It is possible that organized crime bosses or the mafia wanted him dead and hired a hitman. Chuck had testified in a secret state investigation on illegal activity on the Arizona and Mexican border. He was also a witness for the Arizona Attorney General's office in a questioning about a bank. It's possible that the crime bosses were not too pleased with this, but nothing has been confirmed. This hitman could have told Chuck the plan and offered to let him go if he gave him some money. And this could be the reasoning as to why Chuck had a briefcase filled with money at the motel. The hitman could have possibly lured him out to the desert to exchange the money, as it's quieter than a town. However, the hitman could have killed him anyway and taken the money. According to Chuck's daughter, he had a lot of incriminating information on many people, including politicians and the government. Chuck's car was broken into whilst it was in the police's possession, and his house and office were both raided. This theory could explain the break-in and the raid. It seemed like someone was desperate to find something. 2 men even turned up to Ruth's house claiming to be the FBI and searched the house.
A hitman, again, kind of ties into the organized crime stuff. Was it an organized crime member that hired the hitman to do the job? It did seem quite professional in the way that if the gun was wiped down, his finger, they maybe tried to make it look kind of like a suicide. Someone more experienced has done this.
I would say it's definitely someone with experience because they haven't. So far, no one's been caught.
Yeah.
And they've confused the police or whatever's going on. There seems to like they've done a good job.
Not only that, the fact that there was fake FBI rocking up and searching the house. Were they looking for something that was obvious evidence and it maybe explained who done it?
Yeah, it's something
that's crazy. By the way, you don't have fake FBI rocking up and going through your gap unless it is an organized crime.
Yeah. And it's something serious, it incriminates someone high up in some form of mafia / gang.
The potential for it to take down something bigger than he ain't just pissed someone off here.
Yeah,
he has information.
He has something.
On some people maybe higher up or in the wrong places.
In February 1990, NBC's Unsolved Mysteries covered the case. This led to many people calling in and leaving tips, which helped Don Devereaux, an Unsolved Mysteries journalist. When investigating Chuck's life, Don found that Chuck was very involved in money laundering activities through his escrow company. He He learned he was involved in large gold and platinum transactions, and the money he received came from Southeast Asia. Chuck was involved with upwards of $1 billion worth of gold. Chuck kept a copy of all these transactions, which could have been the reason for his death. Someone could have wanted the documents to disappear, which is what Devereaux believes. 3 months after Devereaux had spoken publicly about his theory, a man named Doug Johnston, who worked across the street from Devereaux's office and drove a nearly identical car to Devereaux, was shot behind his ear. Similar to Chuck, the police ruled it a suicide, but Devereaux believes that he was the target, and he was supposed to be killed instead of Doug. Subsequently, an author called Danny Casolaro had approached Devereaux and asked for information on the illegal gold transactions, but died suspiciously before Devereaux had the chance to share his information. He was found in a hotel bathroom with his wrist slashed, but this was odd as Danny was squeamish at the sight of blood and wouldn't even allow his doctor or brother to prick him. There were several more suspicious injuries on him, such as broken fingernails and bruises, but most importantly, a cleaning crew conveniently came in and wiped down all the evidence the following day.
Weirdly enough, I think this final theory almost ties everything together. I'm talking about the hitman, the organized crime, and then ultimately this gold thing. Like, the guy kept a document of every transaction that happened. That is such valuable information, and that would explain why the fake FBI came in. Maybe they were looking for those documents that would potentially incriminate someone.
Yeah, I mean,
loads of people.
Up to $1 billion worth of gold. It's obviously all sketchy, done very illegally. Could probably take a lot of people down.
Yeah.
If the right people got the right hands on it.
Yeah.
So they wanted to get rid of it.
I think this is really interesting. Also, Devereaux, the guy that was sort of digging really deep, he was obviously digging a bit too deep, and the fact that he thinks the person opposite him who drives a really similar car got shot. Maybe he's being a bit paranoid because it's not that far out of it, but yeah, the guy got shot just behind the ear. Did the hitman or the gang just get the wrong guy?
Devereaux thinks he was meant to be the target.
What do you think? Do you think it's just a coincidence? You know when things like that happen, your brain is telling you.
I mean, it lines up it lines up at the right time. It was only 3 months after Devereaux made that public and stuff, so it's a possibility.
Yeah, and then just the way this guy, this Danny lad was, I mean, it just reeks of all those last 3 theories combined.
2 people connected to him, both died.
Yeah.
One got shot behind the ear, one slashed his wrist in the bathroom.
Sus, very sus. So, for me, my final thoughts on this really are that it was organized crime. This bloke maybe got a hold of information that he shouldn't have. Chuck he just got on the wrong side of things, really, and he ended up paying the ultimate price, really. What do you think?
I agree. He was involved with the wrong people. He was obviously going down a hole.
It's definitely organized crime related, though.
100%.
We're not doing no suicide. He's gone loopy.
No, I mean, even to this day, Ruth, she died in 2006, and she was certain that Chuck had not committed suicide and that he was murdered.
There you go. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of The Mysteries. Chip, tell them what they need to do.
Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, turn on notifications, and also follow us on Spotify. You can listen to the Mysteries episodes there, and we'll be back next Monday, 6 p.m. with a brand new case.